And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and the winner is of my Creatures That Should Be Commanders video, Lim-Dul's Paladin. So this is the most recent Creatures That Should Be Commanders video, and I had Lim-Dul's Paladin as number one, and clearly everyone agreed with me. It is far and away the winner of the poll. I just think that it really looks, seems, sounds like a legendary creature. You know, even the art looks like a legendary creature, and then also it's a really interesting build around. There's a lot of things going on here. It's 2 black and a red human knight, 0/3 with trample, and of course that's a very odd combination, but we'll find out why. First of all, though, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard a card. If you don't, sacrifice Lim-Dul's Paladin and draw a card. So already there's a lot of things going on there. You're discarding a card. So right away we're doing a discard theme here. We can, however, just forego paying the discard if we want to draw a card. You know, if we really desperately need to draw a card, we can just sacrifice our commander. Whenever Lim-Dul's Paladin becomes blocked, it gets +6/+3 until end of turn. So that explains the trample, obviously. If it becomes blocked, it's going to be a 6/6 with trample, which is pretty formidable, especially for 4 mana. But if it attacks and isn't blocked, it assigns no combat damage this turn and defending player loses 4 life. So, like I said, there's a lot to build around here. There's a lot to go over. So let's start at the beginning. We're going to be discarding, and there's a couple of cards that are absolute perfect fits in this deck. First one being Hakon, Stromgald Scourge, and I've talked about this card quite a bit on my channel already. 1 black zombie knight 3/3. You may cast Hakon Stromgald Scourge from your graveyard, but not from anywhere else. You can only cast it from your graveyard, which isn't really an issue for us here at all because we can obviously just discard it on our upkeep to our commander. But the most important part is as long as Hakon Stromgald Scourge is on the battlefield, you may play knight cards from your graveyard. And our commander is a knight. So it's an absolute perfect fit in the deck. The interesting thing though here is that originally, Lim-Dul's Paladin obviously was printed as a paladin, but that creature type no longer exists in Magic. However, the Forgotten Realms set is coming out right away, and there are paladins in Dungeons & Dragons. They already printed a Dritz Do'Urden card, and Dritz Do'Urden is a ranger, you know, in the books. Rangers are also in Dungeons & Dragons, and so I'm thinking, are maybe they gonna bring Paladin into Magic the Gathering as well? And if so, I think it's likely this gets errated back to Paladin again, which is actually maybe not a good thing, because then the Hakon thing doesn't work, and that's actually a super good fit in the deck, so watch out for that, I guess. Filth and Anger are also fantastic fits in the deck. 2 cards that we want in our graveyard. You know, I talked about this on my 10 cards you want in your graveyard video. You can obviously go check out that video for maybe some other cards that might fit in this deck, because it's really easy, obviously, to put cards in your graveyard if your commander is discarding. And most of the cards on that list are black and red, so they'll definitely fit. Filth is going to make our commander have Swamp Walk. Anger is going to give it haste. Both are great with a commander that you want to be attacking with. Filth is a little tricky though, because do we want our commander to be blocked or don't we? This is the tricky thing about Lim-Dul's Paladin. You look at that and you go, okay, well, we want it to be blocked, don't we? I mean, because then it gets +6/+3, or maybe we don't want it to be blocked because then it just guarantees our opponent loses 4 life. I mean, if it gets blocked by a 4/4 creature, for example, it's going to get +6/+3 and it'll trample over and do 2 damage. So your opponent's only taking 2 damage, but then they lose a creature. If it isn't blocked, then our opponent's going to lose 4 life. So I guess it's win-win for us. I didn't go around the, you know, force my opponents to block too much because it's difficult to do in Rakdos colors. However, Grappling Hook is one that works really good in this deck. We can put this on our commander. If we have Filth in our graveyard, we're going to want to attack someone that doesn't have swamps, obviously, because we want our commander to be blocked. It's going to have Double Strike, and when it attacks, we may have target creature block it this turn if able, and Trample and Double Strike are a fantastic combination. So we pick a creature we want our commander to run over, essentially, and our commander is going to get +6/+3. It's going to be a 6/6 with Double Strike and Trample, which is a fantastic combination because it's going to deal that first strike damage, kill the creature that is blocking it, trample over for damage, and then when it's dealing the regular damage, that's going to be trample over as well. So that is a great fit in the deck, but only if we want our commander to be blocked. You got to be careful here because we have a lot of effects that are making our commander unblockable, and we have some where maybe we want our commander to be blocked. If our commander is being blocked, like I mentioned in that video, Stranic Resonator and Lithoform Engine are great because we can copy that triggered ability, right? Whenever our commander becomes blocked, it gets +6/+3, so that's a triggered ability that's going to go on the stack, and then we can copy it with Stranic Resonator or Lithoform Engine, and it's going to happen again. So essentially our commander is going to get +12/+6, right? It's going to be a 12/9. Also, we can copy that other ability. When Lim-Dul's Paladin attacks and isn't blocked, that's also a triggered ability. So if our opponent doesn't assign a blocker, that's going to go on the stack. We can copy it as well, and our opponent will lose 8 life. So really either way, these both are going to be fantastic in the deck. But back to the discarding theme, because that's something that we're pretty much guaranteed to be doing every single turn. So we're going to want to take advantage of it. Bone Miser and Surly Badgesaur, just great fits in the deck. We're going to discard a card anyway. So, hey, maybe we want a 2/2 zombie, so we'll pitch a creature card out of our hand. Or maybe we want our Surly Badgesaur to fight another creature and get it off the table. So we're going to pitch a non-creature, non-land card so we can do that. Archfiend of Ifnir and Conspiracy Theorist obviously are also fantastic. Lots of these discard theme things that we're taking advantage of all the discarding we're doing. Archfiend of Ifnir is going to put a -1/-1 counter on each creature our opponents control every time we discard a card. That's fantastic. And Conspiracy Theorist, again, we can just choose the card we want to discard to our Lim-Dul's Paladin. We pick the one that we want to cast, right? Because it's going to go to exile, and then we can play it. So on our upkeep, we just look at our hand and go, okay, well, what do I want to cast this turn? I'll discard that. Conspiracy Theorist will put it in exile, and then we can just cast it on our main phase. Obviously, Madness is going to be fantastic in a deck where you're discarding lots. Big Game Hunter is a personal favorite of mine. Dark Withering is also really good. 1 black mana, destroy target non-black creature seems great. And 1 black mana, destroy a creature with power 4 or greater is also fantastic. I also got Fiery Temper, and I put Angie Falconwrath in here as well. It's a discard outlet, right? We do have a lot of discard stuff in here, and maybe our commander's not going to be on the table, so this is a way we can discard. Also, we do have a lot of Madness, so whenever you discard a card, if it has Madness, you can untap Angie, so that works as well. I had to change this deck up quite a bit because I thought, okay, we're going to go probably a Voltron-ish sort of strategy, but really you can't. You can't do that much of a Voltron strategy with this, because if you just load up your Lim-Dul's Paladin with a bunch of equipment, say for example, like a Sword of Feast and Famine or something, your opponent's just not going to block. They just won't block, and if your Lim-Dul's Paladin attacks and isn't blocked, it doesn't do any combat damage. So they're just going to lose 4 life. If your Lim-Dul's Paladin is a 20/20 and you attack with it, your opponent goes, okay, I'm not blocking, and they're not going to take 20 damage. They're only going to lose 4 life. And then on top of that, the Sword and Feast of Famine, or any of those swords, are also completely useless because the deal damage trigger isn't going to happen. Because again, if your Lim-Dul's Paladin isn't blocked, you're not going to get that trigger because it's not going to deal combat damage. So none of that stuff, the traditional sort of Voltron stuff, works in this deck at all. I really had to rethink how I was going to do this deck. Our commander in this deck is going to be more of a strategy piece for us on the board, where we're using it to discard. If we don't want to, we can sacrifice it to draw a card. Because our commander is doing so much, whatever else we happen to be doing on the board at the time will depend on what we do with our commander. We probably will be attacking with him a lot though, so a card like Cloak of Confusion is perfect. This is just a 1 and a black aura enchant creature you control. Whenever enchanted creature attacks and isn't blocked, you may have it assign no combat damage this turn. If you do, defending player discards a card at random. That's pretty good. So what that's going to do is maybe force our opponent to block, because our opponent's not going to want to discard a card at random. So now they're going to be forced to block. It's going to make our commander a 6/6. Or maybe we just attack one of our opponents. They're going to lose 4 life anyway. Assuming they can't block, they lose 4 life, and now they're going to have to discard a card at random. Already we're not assigning combat damage, so there's no downside there. Lucille is another one I found. You know, there's not a lot of equipment that fits the theme of I'm attacking, but I'm not dealing any damage. This is one that does. Our commander is going to get +2/+2 2/0 and have Menace, which is good because now if our opponent actually wants to block it, now they have to block with 2 creatures. It's going to have +2/+0, which is going to make it an 8/6 with trample. That's pretty darn good. But more importantly, when equipped creature attacks, defending player sacrifices a creature. If they do, you create a walker token, which is essentially a zombie token, right? This is actually a really good card, and I hope they reprint it in some other set so that our Paladin doesn't have to be carrying around a baseball bat with barbed wire wrapped around it. But it does work really good in the deck because, again, we might not be dealing combat damage, but we're always going to be getting that attack trigger. Sort of the Animus, same thing. The +1/+1 might not help us, but we're always going to be getting that land because we're going to be attacking a lot. And Ensnaring Bridge is an interesting one. You know, our commander has a 0 power, and with Ensnaring Bridge in play, creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can't attack, and we are in a discard deck, so there can be a situation where we can just discard all the cards out of our hand. We got no cards in hand, and now only creatures with power 0 can attack, which is our commander, and it's still going to do damage no matter what, right? Either they block it and they'll take damage, or they don't block it and they lose 4 life, so that's win-win for us. But I really, in this deck, went with the theme of, I think we don't want our commander to be blocked. We do have a couple of effects here that are going to maybe want our opponents to block our commander, but mostly I think our opponents are going to not want to block our commander, because losing 4 life, not a big deal, right? So a lot of people just say, I'm not going to block. So I really went with that theme, so I put a lot of our opponents can't block our small creature stuff like Subira and Break Through the Line. Both are great. They're going to make our commander unblockable. Break Through the Line also gives haste. Subira also has that other ability, which I think fits really well in the deck. Pay 1 and a red and tap, discard your hand. Works with the discard theme until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So that's not going to be our commander that's going to be doing that. However, we do have a lot of other creatures in the deck that are going to fit that theme as well, like Bone Dancer and Neckrite. Bone Dancer I talked about recently in one of my 10 cards video, and Neckrite, very similar. Again, the if it attacks and isn't blocked sort of theme I went with here. And Neckrite, 1 black, 2/2. Whenever Neckrite attacks and isn't blocked, you may sacrifice it. If you do, destroy target creature defending player controls. It can't be regenerated. So this is a may. So if we have maybe our Subira there and we want to draw cards with our Neckrite, then we won't sacrifice it. We'll make it unblockable. We'll connect. We'll draw a card with it. Or we can make it unblockable if we want to destroy one of our opponent's creatures. Bone Dancer, same thing. You may put the top creature card of defending player's graveyard on the battlefield under your control. If you do, it assigns no combat damage, but we can assign combat damage if we want to. Goblin Grenadier, same thing. If it's attacking and unblocked, we may sacrifice it. If we do, we destroy a creature and a land, or we can just let it get in for damage. Maybe draw a card off of Subira, or maybe draw 2 cards off of Azra Oddsmaker, which is another sort of strategic fit in the deck. Can be good. You got to play it the right way though. 1 black, red, 3/3 at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may discard a card. Again, so fits the discard theme, right? We can chuck that Anger in our graveyard, or we can chuck that Hack-On in our graveyard if we want. If you do, choose a creature, and when that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you may draw 2 cards. So again, any of our creatures that have the attacking an unblocked theme, we can deal the damage if we want to. I suppose it works with the commander if we have the grappling hook, right? So now we have the grappling hook, we can do that. There's just a lot of facets going on here where we can make our commander blocked or we can make it unblockable. Again, depends which pieces we have in play and what we want to be doing. It is kind of complex. It really can be. One thing is for certain though, our opponents are definitely going to be losing life every turn. So I put Rakdos, Lord of Riots, and Blood Chief Ascension in here. I just think they're good fits in the deck. Rakdos you can't cast unless an opponent lost life this turn. That's almost going to be guaranteed on our turn. Either with Lim-Dul's Paladin or maybe one of our other creatures that we're going to make unblockable. 6/6 with Flying and Trample for 4 mana, which is pretty good, but also creature spells you cast cost 1 last cast for each 1 life your opponent's lost this turn. So likely that's going to be 4. Like I said, I think likely our opponents aren't going to block our Lim-Dul's Paladin, or we're going to make it unblockable. So our opponents are going to lose 4 life, and then all of our creature spells on our second main phase are going to cost 4 less, which is pretty great. And Blood Chief Ascension, just fantastic card at the beginning of your end step. If an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Blood Chief Ascension. I mean, that's going to happen pretty darn quick. And then if there's 3 or more quest counters on it, whenever an opponent puts any card into their graveyard from anywhere they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. It's a really fantastic card. Used to get played in Commander a ton. I don't see it as much anymore. And Neheb, I thought, was another interesting fit in the deck. It's interesting because he has Afflict 3 whenever this creature becomes blocked. A defending player loses 3 life, which is sort of the opposite of Lim-Dul, sort of the reverse of it, I guess. But more importantly, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add 1 red for each 1 life your opponent's lost this turn. So again, we're probably going to get at least 4 red mana off of our Lim-Dul's Paladin from this. So it's just free mana again. And then I threw Master of Cruelties in the deck because why not? You know, if we have a bunch of effects that are going to make our creatures unblockable, I think that's definitely a good fit and can speed up the win. And I also threw Meekstone in the deck. You know, we do have a couple of creatures in this deck with power 3 or greater, but our commander does not. I mean, it can. If it gets blocked, it's going to be a 6/6, but coming around to our untap step, it's going to be an 0/3 again, and it'll untap normally. You know, again, depending on what our opponents are doing, right? Cards like Meekstone, cards like Ensnaring Bridge, cards like Grappling Hook, there's a lot of different facets going on here, so it kind of depends on what our opponents are doing. What we have on the board is going to determine what direction we're going to go, what path we're going to take with this deck in every different game. And I really think that every game you play is probably going to be a little different. You know, you're going to play one game where you're going maybe more of a Voltron strategy, and then the next game, maybe you're playing your Meekstone and locking things down and attacking with your little creatures. It's a really interesting deck, really interesting commander to build around, even though it isn't actually a commander, I know. And again, you know, I didn't play test this deck. I can't play test it, obviously, because I don't have a play group where I can say, hey guys, can I play Lim-Dul's Paladin today? Maybe you do, though. That's why, that's the whole idea here. And I assume the people that voted for this are in that situation where you have a play group where you can just say, hey guys, can I play Lim-Dul's Paladin as my commander? And they'll give it a thumbs up. I can't imagine why they wouldn't. I mean, it certainly isn't overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination. It's interesting. It's really interesting. I definitely wouldn't have any issues if somebody sat across the table from me with a Lim-Dul's Paladin deck. I really do hope that people take this deck and go out into the wild and play with it. Of course, the deck list is in the description, so feel free to do so. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.